Today's video, we'll be looking at this EPIA mini-ITX board as a retro gaming machine.
We review old technology from games to old PCs, and don't forget the doors. Yeah, ancient electronics, we cover it all.
So first off, this isn't a build I would normally do per se, but these parts kind of fell into my lap. I got this board pretty much complete in the box. It was given to me by a friend, and I found this case specifically for mini-ITX boards at a yard sale for $10 not that long ago. So I figured why not, and now we have this video. So now we're going to take a look at the board and a brief look at the case. Then we'll talk about this Windows 98 build that I've put together here, and we'll see how well it performs. So here is the heart of our build, more or less. I don't know how to pronounce that, EPIA Dream Catalyst. It's a mini-ITX motherboard. I really have zero experience with these things. My personal philosophy with computers, I'm not a big fan of laptops or mini computers. Bigger is better for me. I love giant desktop cases, giant towers, a bajillion expansion slots that I'll never use, and sockets that just can't have empty sockets. So this is a little bit the opposite of what I personally am interested in. So yeah, this is my first experience with any of these newer, smaller motherboards. I have some experience with like some older ones, but anything new. I'm not sure, this came out maybe 2004. I'm not 100% sure, but the really interesting thing about this, it uses the M10000. It's a VIA C3 chip. Now the VIA C3 chips are interesting. I want to say they're not really the equivalent of the Pentium 3, but they came out in that kind of era. I believe some of the Pentium 3 motherboards are actually even compatible with some of these VIA C3 CPUs, that you could put them in the same motherboard you could put a Pentium 3 in, or a Celeron. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe there's, it does have compatibility with some of those boards. This is a little bit later one though, and it's a little different. This is all integrated, so let's open this and take a look. This isn't new old stock or anything, but it is mostly there and pretty much unused. So we've got all the little cables here. It's like USB 2.0 and FireWire. Got the I/O plate. Here's our manual, and of course the case badge right here. And then here is the motherboard itself. So this interests me because it might make a interesting retro rig. So we'll see. So here's the CPU right here. It is soldered onto the motherboard, so there isn't any removing or replacing it. I guess unless you've got some mad soldering skills. And then even then I don't know for sure if the BIOS is going to support any other CPU, but it should support other C3s from the same generation. But anyways, this thing runs at 1 gigahertz, although it is not the equivalent of a 1 gigahertz Pentium 4 or even Pentium 3. Sources vary. There's not a lot of concrete information on it, but if I had to give you a speed equivalent, I read some things that maybe it's about the equivalent of a 600 megahertz Celeron, maybe even a 700 megahertz Celeron. So yeah, the CPU came out in 2004, but it's really more the equivalent of a late 90s CPU, at least from what I have read, which makes me think, yeah, it might be pretty decent for Windows 9X sort of games and whatnot. Not sure the specs on this thing as far as like onboard, like on-die cache and whatnot, but this is basically was made for like small motherboards like this and to be efficient. It is super power efficient, so there is that. It's this CPU is very easy on your electric bill. So DDR, I believe this is just regular DDR. There's already a stick in there, actually. Looks like, what is that? DDR 400, PC 3200. I believe this motherboard supports 1 gigabyte. I don't think it supports more than that. Again, not 100% sure. What do we got here? ATX power connector. Is that... I think that's our... Oh, no, look at this. So it has the 2 IDE. I'm not sure what the speed is, but we've got 2 IDE connectors. And then this board also still has a floppy connector. So we can install a floppy drive if we want, which would be great, but fortunately our case that I'm putting this in is a little bit modern, and it actually doesn't have a slot. It was the slot for a floppy drive. So I don't think we'll be using a floppy drive with this build, but with this board it is possible. A little piezo speaker and a single PCI slot. So, probably gonna put video in there, but I'm not sure. This thing has integrated video, so let's look right here at what we have for integrated I/O. PS2, pretty standard, keyboard and mouse. We do have integrated VGA connector there. I'm just not sure of what the integrated built-in video is. 2 USB 2.0 or 2.1, USB 2. Ethernet, I believe. It could be, I think that's Ethernet. Then we got these two. So that looks like S-video, and that looks like composite. That would be my first guess, although this could be like some kind of optical audio out as well, I guess. Parallel port, serial port, and then we have the built-in audio. Again, I'm not sure what we have for audio. I'm trying to take a look here at the motherboard. Don't see an obvious like chip label like crystal or anything like that. So, well, we have the manual, so let's take a look at what the manual says. Okay, so let's take a look at the manual here. So if we open it up, we get our specs. Here's the CPU, VIA C3 Eden. Okay, so it has 128K of L1 and 64K of L2. There's our chipset right here. Now the graphics, it says integrated Unichrome graphics with MPEG-2 accelerator. Now I looked that up, and this is actually encouraging. Apparently this Unichrome it's an upgraded version of the Savage graphics chip from S3. So not like a spectacular graphics card at the time, not super fast, but S3, the Savage, it should be at least good for our purposes. So as a retro machine for like Windows 98 and DOS, if it is actually an update of the Savage 4 graphics, we should at least get pretty good compatibility and decent performance. It should make for a decent retro type computer. So, and then audio, I don't know what that is. VT16166 channel, blah blah blah. Yeah, up to 1 gigabyte of memory, DDR, and it does have all. The ATI is ATA 133, so that's nice. No, USB 2.0. And yeah, so one more thing real quick. Right here, just to confirm, yeah, that is S-video, and that says RCA SPDIF. So that is digital audio out, I believe. But I don't know, can it do both? Will it do video and audio? I don't know what that means exactly. RCA, does that mean it's composite as well as a digital audio out? Not sure. Anyways, so that is the motherboard. So now we can install it and then hopefully maybe find, I don't know if there's even Windows 98 drivers available for this board. It might only be like XP. I don't know. I guess we'll see. This box also didn't come with the driver CD, so I'll have to do some hunting online. Okay, so this is our mini ITX case here. I'm not sure the brand. Kind of looks like some kind of Warhammer-esque bird-ish symbol right there. It's actually a pretty cool case. Definitely more modern than the motherboard. I believe the motherboard's from the early 2000s. This case looks fairly recent. But I did put the green badge on the case for the board, the Dream Catalyst badge. It may look a little stupid, but I don't know. I couldn't help myself. But yeah, it's got this sort of like graded thing here. I just threw in a black DVD drive right here. It's got these feet that are kind of like rubbery. I don't know. I've never really seen that before. It's just these like rubbery feet. It's kind of like how the G5 Macintosh are. I guess there's some with that same case that are also running Intel CPUs, but they have these little handles as well. Although on those cases it's aluminum, and here it's just this like rubbery sort of material. Yeah, I mean, it's not bad at all. On this side, there's the power button, a reset, audio. These are USB 3s. Obviously, that board does not have USB 3 on it, and it only has one PCI slot, and I don't think they make USB 3.0 PCI cards, but I could be wrong. Either way, I'm already using the slot for something else since there's only one slot. Taking a look at the back real quick. I wish I could have had like a black power supply to put in a match, but I can only use what I have, and I really don't feel like investing too much money into this build, especially since the board was given to me. I acquired pretty much all these parts for super cheap. It works. Yeah, there we go with the back of the I/O. We've seen that. So here are the two cards. This is USB 2.0, and Firewire, I don't know, 400 or 800. I'm not sure. I'm not very good with Firewire. This giant case fan here, which is completely unnecessary for this build because I doubt it's going to be giving off any heat. And then we have this video card. I'm going to open this case up and we're going to take a look at it inside. Not the cleanest install job, but it will do. So here's the inside. Again, not the cleanest job at all, but I don't think heat is going to matter too much with this build, being as it's very low power. None of these are like performance parts. There is our card in the PCI slot. Can you guess what card is in there? Just regular IDE. The DVD drive is just IDE. And then we have our IDE hard drive with Windows 98 SE installed. So yeah, I did find pretty much all the Windows 98 SE drivers for this board, and it took me a minute to find them, but they are available for Windows 98. So I'm going to pull this card real quick just so we can look at it. Okay, so here's with the card removed, and you know, we just got that one PCI slot. So I did have a little bit of a, not a challenge, but a little bit of a question I had to ask myself and a decision to make on what to put, if anything, in that single slot. So we do have the built-in video and sound on this. In the end, I usually favor video. I think video is more important than sound. That's just my that's just me. I also could have put in like some kind of SATA controller card, but I thought I would get the best bang for my buck overall with upgrading the video. So we're going to take a look at the video card right now. So this is a PCI GeForce 6200, 256 megabytes of RAM. This is not a high-end or enthusiast graphics card. I think this was I don't even think this was like a mid-tier graphics card for the GeForce 6 line. I think this was their entry-level card. But as far as PCI, it's actually pretty powerful as a PCI card. It's also the most powerful PCI card I own that has Windows 98 drivers. So that works out. So this thing does have like native Windows 98 drivers. I don't have to hack anything. There are official drivers for Windows 98. I believe GeForce 6 was the last of the GeForce card to get official Windows 98 drivers. So This should be, it might be overkill for the CPU for sure. So if we get a bottleneck, it won't be this card, it will be the CPU. At least I think. I do like how the thumb screws are also actually like screws, so that's nice. You can tighten them, and if you don't tighten them too much, or you can still do it with your fingers, but you have the option to really tighten them. So I do like that. Okay, so here we see the computer posting there. We see the VIA C3 at 1 gigahertz. And actually the BIOS on this machine was, for what it is, it had a lot more options than I thought. Usually when I see a thing like this, I don't know, I was thinking like maybe like an OEM type or like real low end motherboard where there's like hardly any options in the BIOS, but I was actually pleasantly surprised. I didn't play around a lot with the BIOS options, but there were more BIOS options than I initially suspected there would be with this motherboard. So yeah, pleasantly surprised. Here we are taking a quick look through CPUZ. We can see our core speed there, 133 MHz bus speed, supports MMX and SSE instruction sets. So there's all our information about this interesting CPU. Alright, and you can look at the different caches and things like that. So installing drivers, I did find this thing called Vinyl Deck. I guess it's kind of like a built-in audio player for this motherboard. I didn't really mess around much with it though. So we're going to take a look at 3D Mark 99. So running 3D Mark 99, it actually looks really nice. It's running really smooth. I don't really see any glitches or weird graphical artifacts going on or anything like that. But if you look down at the FPS counter, it is 0. And obviously we are not running at 0 FPS. So something's going on here that's messing with you know, the benchmark. Look here, it's less than 1 FPS, but obviously looking at the screen, it's actually running fairly smoothly. So there's just something about this board or the CPU or something that's just throwing it off enough that we're getting weird results, although it is running the benchmark pretty okay. And here we go with the end results. We got a measly 25 3D Marks. That may be the lowest I have ever seen with 3D Mark 99 Max. Obviously, though, it's not correct. Just something with this board or CPU or something just kind of threw the benchmark off number-wise, but it actually ran through all the tests really well with no errors or anything obviously goofy going on. And next we have 3D Mark 2000, and as you see there where the little CPU label badge, we just get a white square. So obviously this benchmark has no idea what kind of CPU is installed. But again, it ran all the tests pretty well. It was pretty smooth. I was kind of impressed. And yeah, it did pretty well. I didn't get any crashes or graphical glitches or anything like that. And last, we're going to run 3D Mark 2001, and as you can see, this benchmark actually successfully identifies the CPU as a VS CPU, and this benchmark overall ran well, ran as expected with this setup. You could tell it started to chug a little bit, especially in parts of the benchmark where it was maybe running at high detail. You could definitely tell it was starting to run out of steam. I think running any benchmark later than this, we basically get the same results. It would just continue to get lower and lower FPS. But it did most of the 3D Mark 2001 benchmark fairly well. Again, no crashes or weird lockups or graphical glitches or anything like that. Alright, let's look at some games here. This is Quake II running at 1024 by 768. And yeah, it did pretty well. We're getting a average frame rate of about 52 FPS on this one. Of course, I've ran it multiple times, and yeah, it kept coming out about average about 52, 53 FPS for Quake II. And as for Quake III Arena, running at 1024 by 768 on high details, we actually did a little bit better, getting about 61, 62 FPS. So yeah, that game did pretty well in the benchmark. Now, actually playing the game, it did really well when there wasn't a lot of other players kind of on the screen. But when you started getting into like multiplayer matches and you had a bunch of other characters running around on the screen, it did slow down. It didn't become unplayable, but it did noticeably slow down. And here we are running the Comanche 4 demo with the built-in benchmark. And when I tried to run it, I got an MMX compatible processor not found error. But the game went on to run fine. So I ran it at 1024 by 768 with 32-bit color depth. And I did disable the audio for this benchmark. And I mean, it didn't do too well. Got about 13, 14 FPS average. I ran it again at a lower resolution, 800 by 600 I think, and it was almost no difference in the FPS count. So yeah, I don't. This game just doesn't run all that well on this setup. And here's a little bit of Jane's IAF. I wanted to throw in a nice flight simulator to test out from the late 90s. And it runs okay. I mean, it's most of the time it's sub 30 FPS, but I mean, I thought it was a fairly playable experience. Of course, I don't know what I'm doing, so it's just me spinning around in this plane. But yeah, here it is. So you can see how it runs on this setup.
Keep your position in vertical maneuvers by using the same principles as in the horizontal turn.
And here we have the first Serious Sam game running, and it runs okay. Average frame rate, at least running from this benchmark, was just a little under 30 FPS, so we're getting about like 29 FPS. Not too shabby. And again, that was it, 1024 by 768 resolution. And then the last thing I wanted to run was the demo for the old PC version of Final Fantasy VII. So as you can see there, it did fail the 8-bit palletized textures, which is expected because the GeForce 6 line does not support that anymore. The little bit I played, now I never played this game on the PC, I played it on my PlayStation 1, but the little bit I played here to test, I didn't see any weird graphical things, but I mean, obviously, it must affect the game somewhere. So it probably wouldn't be the ideal graphics card to play this game. It seemed to play okay, although you could tell in some spots it seemed a little bit slow, at least to my eyes. Alright, so what are my thoughts on this machine? Mainly the motherboard and the CPU, which is the VIA, or VIA, however you pronounce it, M10000 CPU running at 1 gigahertz. Now to reiterate, I mean, I tested a handful of games with some benchmarks. I didn't get to like extensively test this board and CPU just due to life being in the way and time limitations, but the time I did spend with it, I found it to be relatively stable, and I was actually, I don't know if impressed is the word, but I expected it to do a lot worse. So it actually performed a lot better than I expected. It was pretty acceptable in a lot of games. Now, a lot of that's probably due to the graphics card I put in there. Even though it was a PCI card in the 6200 or the GT 6200, you know, it was like an entry-level, mid-level at best card when it came out. I think it was like an entry-level card when it came out. But in this machine, it's actually quite powerful, maybe even overpowered. And I was kind of going more for performance with this built-in compatibility. So with and we could have put in a more powerful PCI card, but I think I wanted something that was really powerful but still maintained at least a good deal of Windows 98 compatibility. And I think that card, if you're going for that, that card's a good match for this build. At least for 98. If you put XP on it, gee, I don't even know what NVIDIA's last PCI card was, but there might be a little more powerful one. I know, yeah, there are. I know there are more powerful PCI cards, so you could go more powerful with if you go the XP route. But anyways, yeah, I was, like I said, I wasn't impressed necessarily, but it did a lot better than I thought it would. Now, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this board for a retro build. It's kind of like, if it's all you got sitting around, yeah, I mean, it's serviceable. Or if you really get, I don't know, aroused by low power usage CPUs, then sure. But, I mean, why? I mean, I just don't see why you would specifically go after this build unless you're really big on, like, low power usage. So I mean, if you can't find something period correct like a Pentium 2 or a Pentium 3 or something along those lines, I mean, I think you're way better served by just getting a Pentium 4 machine. They're extremely abundant, you know, and I think a Pentium 4, I think a Pentium 4 PC would fit the mold much better for a Windows 98 or, you know, an XP build, at least an early XP build. So yeah, I would just go to Pentium 4 route, especially, and I'm not a big fan of these small form factor motherboards. I get the usage, I get where they could come in handy, but I don't know, for gaming, I mean, that's alright. I'd rather take like a Pentium 4 or an Athlon XP or Pentium 3 or something along those lines, especially to give me more slots. So for what it is, it's not bad, and you can make a retro rig out of it, but there's much better options. So there are some things I didn't really get to test out. I had two other things I was thinking about doing, and it involved the video card. Now, I went for performance here. Now, I could remove that card and put in something like a Voodoo 3 or something earlier where we're going to go for compatibility more for performance. Because, I mean, that NVIDIA 6200, I mean, it is missing some features for 98. It's missing like palette or 8-bit textures or 8-bit palletized textures, and I think fog tables it doesn't do. And it is a newer driver, so I think we could have got we would have got less performance with an older card, but we probably would have got higher compatibility. But I didn't have time to test that out. I also wanted to test the built-in video, which is based on like the Savage 4 chipset, I believe. But unfortunately, I was able to install the drivers for the built-in video, and then on a reboot, it just would not bring up Windows, just black screen. So I don't know what was going on with that. I may try to look into that a little bit more to see what was going on, but that's why I didn't test the built-in video for this motherboard. It's just I just couldn't get it to run right. Like I said, I installed the drivers. It seemed like everything was going fine, but it just would not go into Windows. It just gave me a black screen. So not sure what was going on there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm gonna hold on to this thing because it's just not my cup of tea. But I don't know, if I find time, if I figure out what's going on with the built-in video, I may do another short follow-up video just showing that built-in video and how that performed. But other than that, it will make a retro machine, you know, in a pinch. But like I said, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. It is an interesting CPU though, very low power usage, and as a Windows 98 machine, it performs adequately. XP, I assume you would get, you know, much less performance. It will work with XP, but besides like the earliest XP titles for gaming, you know, I don't think you're better off with Windows 98. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you have any comments or suggestions, put them in the comments. I'd love to hear them, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching. Hey guys, just a quick update. I did reinstall Windows, and I just want you guys to know I did get the drivers and everything seemed to be working for the built-in graphics for this motherboard. So stay tuned to our next video. We're going to look at the built-in graphics from S3. I know it's a little backwards. We probably would have wanted to do this video first and then the video with the upgraded machine with the PCI card. But this is how we're going to do it, so stay tuned. Our next video, we'll be taking a look at this same machine. So we'll be taking a look and see how that built-in video does, and we'll be able to compare it to the more powerful NVIDIA 6200 that we had installed.